Good morning, ladies, gentlemen, distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends. Welcome to the 2024 Regional Symposium. My name is Kimbert Evans. I am an economist at the Research and Policy Unit of the Ministry of Finance, and it's a pleasure to be your host this morning. We are here to address critical issues impacting the economic growth and resilience of St. Lucia and the wider OECS region. Over the next 2 days, we will explore innovative approaches to fostering sustainable development and strengthening our economies. With an esteemed lineup of experts, policymakers, and thought leaders, I am confident we will be engaging in productive discussions that pave the way for meaningful progress. But before we begin, let's take a moment to seek divine guidance. So let's all stand for prayer. Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we gather here today with grateful hearts, seeking your guidance and wisdom. We thank you for bringing together minds, voices, and visions committed to advancing our communities and the shared prosperity of our region. Lord, as we embark on discussions to address the challenges facing our people, grant us clarity and understanding that we may recognize the path forward to resilience and sustainable growth. Bless each speaker, participant, and contributor here today. May our conversations be fruitful, our intentions pure, and our actions align with the greater good. Guide us to solutions that will uplift the lives of all within our region, especially the most vulnerable. We ask your blessings on this gathering, that it may be marked by unity, purpose, and commitment to progress. Let this symposium be a step towards a brighter, more prosperous future, filled with hope, peace, and shared success. May the grace of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ be with us all. Amen. Thank you. Please have your seats. Now, to formally welcome us and set the tone for our time together, I am pleased to introduce Mr. Janai Leons. He's the Chief Economist from the Research and Policy Unit. And I will read his bio. Mr. Leons is a St. Lucian-born economist and father. He attained a Bachelor of Science degree in Economics and Management from the University of the West Indies and a Master's degree in Finance and Investment from Durham University in the United Kingdom. He has over 15 years of experience in building and managing professional relationships and projects between multiple stakeholders in a wide array of settings, including government. He is a keen participant in the digital space, particularly concerning data visualizations and data analytics, having advanced knowledge and software packages such as Tableau, Power BI, and Stata, and programming languages such as R. Furthermore, Mr. Leons is a published author with papers in the Journal of Eastern Caribbean Studies and the World Journal of Entrepreneurship, Management, and Sustainable Development. Mr. Leons' research interests include labor markets functioning, particularly concerning gender disparities. Mr. Leons is the Chief Economist at the Department of Finance in St. Lucia and currently spearheads several projects, including St. Lucia's Blue Bond issuance and efforts towards the introduction of universal health care in St. Lucia. And with this, we welcome Mr. Janai Leons.
Thank you very much, Chair of Ceremonies, and good morning to all. Ambassador, His Excellency Colin Murdoch, Permanent Secretaries, Deputy Permanent Secretaries, Directors, OECS colleagues, panelists, chairpersons, and honored guests, welcome and thank you. I'm delighted to have everyone here at our policy symposium, which is themed Addressing the Critical Barriers to Growth in St. Lucia with Perspectives from the OCS. This symposium emerges from extensive discussions that the Department of Finance has had with the Chamber of Commerce and Agriculture and is supported by years of departmental research. The Caribbean region has experienced a notable slowdown since the 2000s in economic growth, with growth rates being significantly lower than historical averages. Some persons have attributed this natural deceleration, which is in keeping with post-independence growth period where growth would have been high, and others link this to global trends. But notwithstanding which school of thought you believe, the impact is very clear, and our region faces persistent challenges of unemployment and social disparities. So today's symposium is focused on highlighting actionable solutions on several thematic areas. One of them is economic growth, the other labor market dynamics. We would also be looking at trade, law and order, and renewable energies. The program consists of 7 sessions, each featuring regional experts who would share insights and innovative approaches within these crucial areas. And again, all of those discussions will be consistent with the theme that I mentioned earlier. Each session follows a structured format whereby the chairperson of that session would provide an introduction of the persons within that particular thematic area, and it will be followed by expert presentations by each of the panelists in those areas. We encourage your active participation during the question and answer segments that would follow each session. The insights and the recommendations from today and tomorrow's discussions will inform a policy matrix that would directly contribute to St. Lucia's 2025-26 budget planning and also broader regional policy initiatives. As you can tell, the initiative is a virtual and also in-person session. So online, we have over 12 participants, and we look forward to a day of productive dialogue and meaningful exchange. And we look forward to the same tomorrow as well. Thank you very much. Chairperson, over to you.
Bilateral fora on issues such as international trade, policy, sustainable development, private sector engagement, and government relations. He has also provided and continues to provide advice to ministers of government, senior public sector officials, senior management, intergovernmental organizations, and business executives. Currently, he holds the post of Senior Technical Specialist at the OCS Mission in Geneva, as well as the officer in charge of the Economic Affairs and Regional Integration Division. He previously held a senior advisory role at the CARICOM Secretariat and also headed the Barbados Private Sector Trade Team. And with this, welcome Mr. Richards.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and a pleasant good morning to everyone, especially to Ambassador Colin Murdoch, our keynote speaker for today. On behalf of the OCS Commission, we want to welcome you to this regional economic development symposium. We are very pleased to partner with the Department of Finance and the Ministry of Commerce of the Government of St. Lucia I must mention especially the contributions of Janai, who spoke before me, Tervina, and the team at the Research and Policy Unit, and all of their inputs into making this event a success. I also want to recognize colleagues from the Economic Affairs and Regional Integration Division of the OECS Commission, in particular Clarence, Shakiri, James, Natasha, and Claudia, for their very valuable inputs, and without whom this event would also not have taken place. The topic before us today is very timely, because we are talking about addressing critical barriers to growth in St. Lucia with perspectives from the OECS region. And there's an inherent recognition in this topic that the challenges which we face are not localized. Not only the OECS, which is facing many critical barriers to growth and sustainable development, not only St. Lucia, but indeed all small island developing states, all developing countries, and indeed the entirety of the world. We are at an inflection point in terms of our history. The challenges are certainly numerous. We are battling with a climate crisis. We are confronted by natural disasters. Of course, there are the geopolitical realities that we face, none more so than the 2-year-plus war in Ukraine, as well as the Middle East crisis. We've had to deal with supply chain disruptions, pandemics, inflation, and perhaps hyperinflation even. There are trade wars, and also there's talk of deglobalization. And so this is really the context in which we are discussing these issues today and tomorrow. It is the context in which we are practicing development as St. Lucia, as OECS countries, as small island developing states. And essentially, what we have is an external environment which is very hostile and which has the possibility to constrain our growth. We certainly have to find ways to strengthen our economies. We need economic instruments which are available to us, which would help us to respond to what is happening around us. And it's really in that context that discussions such as these are extremely critical. Now, part of strengthening our economies requires advocating for a more just international order, including with respect to the global economic and financial architecture, because we do need a favorable external environment that can facilitate our own indigenous activities with respect to promoting growth and development, especially sustainable development. Internally, we have to also focus on economic diversification efforts. We have to focus on trade expansion, and we have to certainly focus on completing the circle of regional integration, which we started several decades ago, and which is still very much an ongoing project. I want to really contextualize the discussion which we'll be having really in that context that I just outlined. It's difficult to separate the external environment in which we operate and the external environment does have a bearing on our growth. It has a bearing on our development. Just a few weeks ago, there was the threat of strike action at ports in Miami, for instance. And had those strike actions taken place, it would have placed our own food security at a severe risk, simply because of how important that part of the world is as a transshipment point for our own sort of imports, for our goods, for our needs. And I'm saying all of this because it's difficult to separate the things we need to do internally from what is happening around us. And so there is a connection, and we cannot discuss growth, we cannot discuss development of the OECS or of any of our individual countries in isolation to the external world around us. And so it's a two-pronged approach that we sort of need to involve ourselves in. One is with respect to our advocacy on the international scene with respect to addressing some of the critical issues confronting the world today, with respect to issues around globalization, issues around strengthening our global supply chains, for example, but also focusing on those issues which are internal to us, such as managing our debt, issues around financing our resilience and our response to climate change and natural disasters, but also the policy response that are shaped by us in terms of how we can also pursue growth and development. And so I'm very certain that these and many other issues are going to be part of our discussions for today and tomorrow. I'm certainly looking forward to the contributions from experts, from the audience, from thinkers online and elsewhere. And I want to wish you a very productive 2 days. And again, on behalf of the OECS Commission, especially the Economic Affairs and Regional Integration Division, we're very pleased to be a part of this, and we want to wish you every success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. And now, to further set the stage, let me welcome Ambassador His Excellency Colin Murdoch. He's the head of the Geneva mission of the OECS. And Mr. Murdoch is the permanent observer of the Organization of the Eastern Caribbean States to the United Nations office in Geneva. Prior to his appointment in Geneva, Mr. Murdoch, who is a citizen of Antigua and Barbuda, had been serving as a senior advisor in the Office of the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda since 2016. He was the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, International Trade and Immigration from 2014 to 2016, a post he also held from 1995 to 2009. He was the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Trade, Industry and Commerce from 2009 to 2014. Mr. Murdoch has also served as the Commissioner of Antigua and Barbuda to the OECS since 2011, and as the permanent representative of Antigua and Barbuda to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from 1982 to 1986. Let me read this again. Mr. Murdoch has also served as the Commissioner of Antigua and Barbuda to the OECS since 2011 and the Permanent Secretary of Antigua and Barbuda to the World Trade Organization since 2013. He was the Foreign Service Officer at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from 1982 to 1986 and a Senior Foreign Service Observer from 1989 to 1994. He also served as a non-resident ambassador to Cuba from 1997 to 2004. Mr. Murdoch has a master's degree from Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, Tufts University, Medford, Massachusetts, United States, and a graduate diploma from the Institute of International Relations, University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, Trinidad and Tobago, and a bachelor's degree from the University of the West Indies, Keyville Campus, Barbados. And with that, let me welcome Ambassador His Excellency Colin Murdoch.
Thank you so much, Chair. And I want to thank also my colleague, Joel Richards, of our mission here in Geneva, who serves as counselor here in the mission. And I want to also greet all my colleagues of the OECS Commission. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for the opportunity to share briefly with you some thoughts on critical barriers to growth in our OECS region. It is true that the diverse member states of the OECS enjoy good levels of GDP per capita. It is also true that since becoming independent in the 70s and early 80s, OECS countries have made significant progress in human and social development. Certainly, they perform well in delivering access to primary and secondary education. For example, rates of enrollment and completion for both primary and secondary schooling are high across our region. Enrollment in secondary education has almost doubled in the region since the 70s. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, from the establishment of the OECS in 1981 through to 2008, member states enjoyed high economic growth rates that saw them triple their GDP per capita while adapting from cash crops to tourism as the main economic activity. Unfortunately, since 2008, the region has been faced by an unprecedented number of exogenous shocks, which themselves are even more unprecedented because of their scale and impact. The global financial crisis of 2007-2008 had a profound impact on OECS countries, leading to 1, severe economic contraction, seen mostly regarding reduced tourism revenues and lower foreign direct investment. 2, increased unemployment and social strain, including severe impacts on social services and public spending. 3, declining remittances. 4, debt and fiscal challenges. 5, trade and export decline. 6, rising cost of imports and inflation. And 7, extended recovery period. We should also not forget the double whammy of Hurricanes Irma and Maria in 2017, which caused widespread devastation in several OECS countries. Of course, we cannot forget the social and economic fallout from the COVID-19 crisis. All of this is in addition to the persistent and existential threat of climate change and natural disasters. As if these adverse impacts were not enough, geopolitical fault lines continue to deepen and widen. There is talk of deglobalization and economic decoupling. This is the environment in which OECS countries are pursuing their growth and sustainable development objectives. It is a very toxic and volatile external environment, especially for small island developing states. Therefore, our main efforts must be shaped with a full appreciation of the exogenous world. Allow me now, in a very succinct form, to highlight a few areas for us to ponder. Geographic and economic isolation. A primary barrier for OECS countries is their geographic isolation. Being separated by vast oceans limits access to larger markets, which in turn restricts their ability to scale up economic activities. Transport and shipping costs are prohibitively high, making imports expensive and exports less competitive on the global market. Moreover, the narrow economic base in most OECS countries means that they depend on a few key industries, such as tourism and agriculture, which are highly vulnerable to external shocks. To address this, we must consider innovative approaches to digital trade and e-commerce, which could bridge the gap caused by geographic isolation. Investing in reliable internet infrastructure and digital literacy programs would help connect OECS countries to the global marketplace, allowing local businesses to expand their reach without the burden of high shipping costs. 2, vulnerability to climate change and natural disasters. Climate change poses an existential threat to the OECS. Rising sea levels, increased storm frequency and intensity, and coral bleaching are already affecting these nations profoundly. For instance, in low-lying atolls, rising sea levels threaten to submerge entire communities. Increased storm damage not only devastates infrastructure, but also hinders recovery efforts, leading to long-term economic setbacks. To mitigate these impacts, a proactive approach is essential. OECS countries must prioritize sustainable, resilient infrastructure designed to withstand extreme weather. The international community should support these efforts by providing both financial aid and technical expertise for climate adaptation projects. Additionally, we should promote nature-based solutions, such as mangrove restoration, which protect coastlines from storm surges and support biodiversity. Global greenhouse gas reductions remain essential, and international advocacy by the OECS is critical to keep this priority at the forefront of climate agreements. 3, dependence on a narrow economic base. As I mentioned earlier, OECS economies often depend heavily on a limited range of sectors. Tourism, for instance, contributes to 39% of the gross domestic product on average and accounts for some 11% of the region's jobs, according to the World Bank. This makes OECS countries highly susceptible to shifts in global travel trends and economic downturns. The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted this vulnerability as tourism came to a standstill, crippling OECS economies almost overnight. Similarly, agriculture in the OECS is frequently hampered by a limited arable land, low crop diversity, and vulnerability to pests, diseases, and drought. To build resilience, economic diversification is paramount. The OECS should explore new industries, such as renewable energy production, fisheries management, and sustainable agriculture. Training local populations in fields like information technology and renewable energy can create new job opportunities and decrease dependence on tourism. Additionally, promoting cultural exports, including music, art, fashion, and literature, can further diversify revenue streams while preserving our cultural heritage. 4, limited access to finance and investment. A significant barrier to growth in the OECS is the lack of access to adequate financing. Due to their small markets and perceived vulnerability, OECS countries struggle to attract foreign investments. Furthermore, many OECS countries face high levels of public debt, limiting their ability to invest in essential infrastructure and social services. International financial organizations have a critical role in addressing this barrier. By creating targeted funds and grants for OECS countries and other SIDS, the global community can alleviate the debt burden and provide much-needed capital for infrastructure, healthcare, education, and climate resilience. Additionally, innovative financing mechanisms such as blue and green bonds tailored to sustainable development projects in the OECS and other SIDS can attract responsible investors who seek to support climate resilience and environmental sustainability. In closing, the OECS stands at a crossroad. Our unique position makes us vulnerable to numerous challenges, but it also endows us with remarkable resilience and potential. By addressing geographic isolation, enhancing climate resilience, diversifying economies, improving access to finance, we can create a foundation for sustainable growth and development. I thank you. Mr. Chairman, over to you.
Okay, now let's move to our first session for this morning, titled New Perspectives on Economic Development. And to chair this session, let me welcome Ms. Yasmin Alfred. Ms. Alfred is an economist at the Research and Policy Unit of the Ministry of Finance. So let's welcome Ms. Alfred.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Economic development can be defined as the reduction of poverty, inequality, and unemployment within a growing economy. Economic development is characterized by economic growth accompanied with positive and progressive changes in the socio-economic structure of a country. Economic development in small island developing states presents unique challenges and opportunities. Small island developing states often grapple with geographical isolation, limited resources, vulnerability to climate change, and small domestic markets, which can hinder sustainable growth. Developing states face significant hurdles. Their unique circumstances also offer pathways to innovative solutions and resilient economies. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Session 1, New Perspectives on Economic Development. My name is Yasmin Alfred, your session chair for this morning, an economist at the Research and Policy Unit. Today we will have 3 presentations: multidimensional measures of development presented by Dr. Roxanne Brizan Martin and Dr. Clarence Henry. Secondly, the OECS's Regional Development Agenda presented by Mr. Jamie McDonald. And thirdly, Economic Development, Youth Economy Perspective presented by Mr. Brian Vidal. Delivering on the topic multidimensional measures of development, we have Dr. Roxanne Brizan Martin. She's currently the Program Director of Health, Social Inclusion, and Social Protection at the OECS Commission. Dr. St. Martin is an economist, project manager, trainer, and educator with over 17 years of regional experience in developmental work and academia. Her areas of specialization are health, social and development economics, with a focus on health systems management, healthcare access, and health financing. Her project experience spans several areas, including local capacity advocacy and policy monitoring for civil society organizations, capacity building, results-based project management, strategic planning, gender statistics and gender equality, social protection, and inclusion. As an educator, she is trained in university teaching and learning and has served on several committees focused on outreach, mentorship, and youth engagement. Dr. Clarence Henry, who is currently the head of the Regional Integration Unit at the OECS Commission, is a St. Lucian development economist. He is a holder of a diploma in teaching, a Bachelor of Science degree in economics and government, a Master of Science, and a Doctor of Philosophy degrees in Economic Development from the University of the West Indies. Currently, Dr. Henry serves in the service of the Commission of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States in the capacity of acting head of the Regional Integration Unit. His current portfolio at the OECS Commission focuses on the advancement of initiatives to strengthen the free movement of persons regime within the Eastern Caribbean Economic Union. Previously, Dr. Henry has served as a lecturer of economics at the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College and is a former head of the Social Science Department. His teaching portfolio also includes the teaching of UE courses at the St. Augustine and Global campuses. Dr. Henry's research interests include economic development, growth, and economic integration among small states. Dr. Henry has published work with a focus on economic integration among CARICOM and OECS small states. Delivering on the topic, the OECS's Regional Development Agenda, we have Mr. Jamie McDonald. Mr. Jamie McDonald is an economist at the OECS Commission. He is an economist with a focus on environmental economics and development. At the OECS, he has been responsible for transforming the OECS development strategy into an actionable framework. He holds a master's degree from SOAS, University of London, in development economics. Working at the OECS, he has researched the policies promoted by the IMF in climate-vulnerable countries in the Global South and has aided in establishing a network of universities to develop economic climate adaptation capacity. Speaking on the topic, economic developments, youth economy perspective, we have Mr. Brian Vidal, CEO of the Youth Economy Agency. Mr. Brian Vidal has been serving as the Chief Executive Officer and the Director of the Youth Economy Agency from November 2023. Prior to this, he served as an examiner with the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, focusing on anti-money laundering, combating terrorism, and proliferation financing, and IT risk management. He also served as the Senior Operations Officer at the Eastern Caribbean Partial Credit Guarantee Corporation and the Relationship Manager of Financial Solutions with the Royal Bank of Canada, St. Kitts and Nevis branch. Prior to joining RBC, he was a customer relationship executive at the Bank of St. Lucia, specializing in micro, small, and medium enterprise financing. Okay, so each presenter will have a total of 10 minutes to deliver their presentations. We will wait till after all presentations are done to take questions or any contributions on the floor. So let us begin with our first presentation, Multidimensional Measures of Development, presented by Dr. Roxanne St. Martin and Dr. Clarence Henry. Welcome.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Just as we await the presentation, so I can't see from here. Interesting. Okay, I suspect I will require some sort of neck massage after this. Oh, excellent. So if you can just maybe remove this guy from here. Okay, good morning again. So I hope I still have 10 minutes. So this presentation was put together by myself and Dr. Roxanne Brizan, who is unable to be here since, duty calls as usual for those of us at the OECS Commission. So I'm presenting on multidimensional measures of development. And of course, one could appreciate that this is an issue currently being discussed within the international community as to what is the right measure of development, especially among developing economies, and more specifically among small island developing states, which includes our countries. So as you probably might be aware, so William Arthur Lewis, our own Nobel laureate, would have prescribed, if you like, and some of us have referred to this as the Lewis dictum, where he spoke about good economics begins with a concern for the conditions under which people live. In fact, clearly articulating this in his models, unlimited supply of labor model, as well as in 1950, where he would have published the industrialization of the British West Indies, where the main focus started with the citizen within the British West Indies, looking at whether the economic arrangement was suffice to advance the development of those individuals. And so, if we look at the whole issue of development, even before going into the definition of development, the issue of national welfare becomes critical. And as most, I'm going to get 2 extra minutes for this. I thought it was okay a while ago. Oh, on Zoom it's not. What they say on Zoom? Everything? Yeah, these are not my notes though, but so I'm not really reading. That's my colleague's notes. That's better?
They say they're still showing us stuff on Zoom, but it's okay, it's fine. That's just how the settings are for that thing.
Yeah, well.
It's okay.
Tell colleagues you can screenshot the notes. Might be good. Certainly. So I have 2 extra minutes. So I believe I would have been on the other slide. And so many of you are economists and development practitioners in the room, and I'm pretty sure quite a number of persons who are online are also of that nature. And fundamentally, when we hear of economic development, it starts with gross domestic product, and it starts with the gross domestic product per capita indicators. And of course, we've always noted, and certainly in more recent times, that these indicators are not sufficient to really define what development is, especially among developing countries and smaller and developing states. And so, of course, there is the greater concern as we evolve, the conversation around development on the issue of human welfare. Because, I mean, let's face it, why we have economies and we set up systems for what? For what end? To certainly ensure that the citizens who enjoy the economic arrangement within the system enjoy higher levels of welfare. And we talk about social economics for emphasis on health, economics for an emphasis on gender balances, with an emphasis on crime as some of the critical issues that really defines one's welfare. Now, I'm hoping you can see that. I myself can barely see it. The whole issue of definitions of development. And I think the chair of this session actually started by defining development. And no matter how you may look at development, there needs to be an understanding that the development is premised on the view, and maybe I could say it better here, that you have a process of expanding freedoms, right? Nobel laureate Amartya Sen, Indian economist, would have articulated the importance of development as freedom and enhancing capacities, right? The importance of focusing on the individual circumstance. Is it okay for an economy to be growing, per capita income to be high, but there is barely access to healthcare and education systems of limited quality and access, or basic infrastructure, be it water and roads, not at the level that they should be? And then, of course, the importance is to ensure that the whole society benefits from this development. And of course, again, as the conversation on development evolves, You have the whole idea of a traditional view, and I think I've mentioned some of those, and a sort of alternative and more focused perspective and more contemporary perspective, I should say, on development. So, you know, and those of us who are economists in the room would appreciate this particularly. One thought, you know, if an economy just grow, then there will be development. Sort of a linear approach, classical economic perspective on development. There's a focus that if you want economies to grow, then you need to invest in capital and the solo growth models and other sort of classical economic models that emerged to demonstrate this. But what has emerged in the past is one that has not necessarily dealt with the human aspect of development that we're all talking about. I remember as a young economist reading on the experience of Jamaica, where it pertains to the whole issue of structural adjustment policies, and having to appreciate that eventually even the World Bank and the IMF had to pivot, if you like, to concepts such as structural adjustment with a human face as they re-examine those policies. So the alternative approach really recognizes development is nonlinear, recognizes that as we look at critical investments to address development, to address growth, innovation becomes the central aspect of that, and that importantly, significant investment in social capital is important. Now, I know traditional economists don't always like hearing that you have to invest more in social capital. I had a conversation once with a good friend of mine, economist, not economist from St. Lucia though, and you know, expressing that we need to spend more monies on the social aspect and less monies elsewhere. And that would certainly help advance economic development. And let's just say that the view was that perhaps Clarence was becoming less of an economist and more of a social activist. But really, that's where it starts, that you need to understand the welfare issues around development. So just to speed up, so now we talk about sustainable development. No, we're talking about GDP and GDP per capita anymore, at least not among developing economies. And as we engage in international fora, we try to, our countries, our own heads of our countries, the OECS Commission, certainly our Director General, Dr. Jules, emphasize the need for us to look at a different view. So if you talk about sustainable development, which they say, and we all know, refers to, and I think I'll look in this direction, I can barely see what's on the screen, development which meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs, inter and intra-generational. That's important. And that's why you have the Sustainable Development Goals, which I'll speak to very quickly in a bit. The need to improve opportunities for individuals and communities with an effort of building resilience. And those of us who've experienced issues around climate change and the impact of major hurricanes would appreciate this. The need to increase in adaptive capacity and opportunities to improve economies, social and ecological systems. There's this nice diagram, which I can barely see on my screen, but because again, I have a much smaller screen in front of me now. So essentially, if you're talking about sustainable development, the different aspects of sustainable development, it's not just about the economics. And of course, it's not just about the political, and it's also not just about the ecological. We need to be able to bring these two in a good bouillon, if you like. Those of us, we just had Junior Creole, so everybody should appreciate bouillon, right? Put everything in there, and hopefully it tastes well without too much salt, right? And so that's important to appreciate. I'm told I have two minutes. And so sustainable development would require us to ensure that we have proper and adequate trade-offs among those three aspects, the economics, the political, the social, and the ecological. So I actually added a fourth. Now, these are not new to you, I would assume. So as we look at how we define development, we look at development in different contexts, Human Development Index, per capita income not enough, so let's just add a composite index. We add in here life expectancy, we add in here the number of years of schooling, right? That was not enough. We pivoted towards the multidimensional poverty index. That was not enough. You have the gender development index, because there's a question as to the extent to which this is well balanced across the genders, and then social progress index. But the point here is that there are several different approaches to looking at multidimensional development, looking at as many indicators as you can in order to tell the right story about where a country is in its development progress. I will not speak too much, but just to say that we've had in the OECS and within CARICOM significant progress over the years. I think many of the speakers before me would have mentioned that. Certainly Ambassador Murdoch would have mentioned that as well as our keynote speaker. We know we are high, upper middle income states by per capita income measure. So we're doing fairly okay from that standpoint. But there still needs to be an effort on the social aspect, as well as, of course, given the context of climate change, the ability to build resilience. Within the context of trade liberalization, the ability to compete the international level and to strengthen our ability to trade. The fundamental fact is that since trade liberalization, our economies have seen declining shares in merchandise trade globally. And this is something that we need to address, as it were. The issues around competing for foreign direct investment remains also very critical. I wouldn't say more about these. Our keynote speaker would have highlighted much of this. This slide really was meant to sort of give a sense of, from the global stage, the whole idea of human development and now the Sustainable Development Goals, Human Development Goals, where we will focus on 8 primary goals, and now we have 17 primary goals under the Sustainable Development Goals agenda. The fundamental fact here is that these, especially the SDGs, are focused on strengthening human development within the context of looking at a multi-development frame. It would be useful, and I hope perhaps sometime during this to the regional research symposium, there will be some conversation around how far we have gone in certainly meeting the Sustainable Development Goals, as these remain important. So I'll skip that. I'll also skip this. What are the challenges? So as we look at the whole issue of multi-development measures, and there's the appreciation that it can't be just one indicator, and there are several indicators, and there are also several indices that are being used, right? There's an understanding that data remains important, because without that data, we would not be able to measure how far we've gone with the development process. There's an understanding, too, that we need to consider how we operate in advancing the development agenda. You know, everybody likes to do their own little thing on the side and hope that the whole will come together properly, but we don't know the different pieces we're doing, so chances are if we're working towards a rectangle, when we put the different pieces together, we will get a triangle perhaps, primarily because we work in silos most of the time. But there is the important consideration that we need to strengthen data, we need to address working in silos, and of course there is a very critical question here in terms of how does government play a role in strengthening the pivoting to multi-development measures, but also in ensuring that once there's an appreciation of those measures, that you are able to implement such within the context of developing national communities. Now, these are OECS strategic priorities in terms of the added value that we bring to the conversation. I wouldn't say more to this because my colleague who will be speaking after me, Mr. Jimmy, will speak somewhat to those issues. But I think as I close, there needs to be, within the discussion on multi-development measures, there needs to be a consideration and a focus on key issues. For instance, how do we create the culture for greater efficiency? How do we leverage opportunities for greater knowledge sharing and engaging? I think this is a good start. This is something that happens almost every year from my understanding, but we need to broaden it. As I look around the room, I'm wondering, you know, apart from the public officials, we need to have some other key individuals here as well to really learn and appreciate some of the good information and knowledge that will be shared during the next 2 days. So I think that is it for me, and certainly I look forward to questions at the end of all the presentations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Clarence Henry. We looked at several different approaches, looking at multi-dimensional measures. We saw that he highlighted the importance of the social aspects, human development of the economy, as well as the importance of sustainable development. So thank you for that presentation. Next up, we have Mr. Jamie McDonald, who is an economist at the OECS Commission, and today he will be speaking on the OECS's Regional Development Agenda. So welcome, Mr. McDonald.
Good. Can you see it online?
Yes, yes, we can online.
Okay, perfect, great.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm going to be presenting on the OECS development strategy. There's a bit of, It's okay. It's good?
Let me check this over.
Do you want me to turn the volume down? But I don't know if... Can you still hear me online? I think that's fine.
Yes, we can see you online. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Okay. I'm going to be presenting on the OECS development strategy. I wanted to start with a brief background on the ODS because I'm not sure how aware everyone in the room is of the strategy. So I wanted to bring everyone up to speed. So the OECS development strategy is mandated by the revised Treaty of Basse-Terre, which mandates all the work of the OECS Commission. The RTB states that each protocol member state shall participate in the setting of both general and specific developmental objectives, which arise from the OECS Development Strategy and the OECS Development Charter. The general objectives cover economic transformation, growth, employment, poverty reduction, and attainment of the appropriate levels measured by human development indices as set by the United Nations. The RTB goes on to advocate for the harmonious and optimal development of the following sectors: agriculture, manufacturing, tourism, services, construction, information and communications technology, education and health. The ODS is an articulation of strategic areas aimed at achieving 3 specific policy objectives: to achieve economic growth at a level that allows for a meaningful reduction to the persistently high rates of unemployment that continue to fatigue member states, to improve the quality of life of every citizen of the OECS territory through equitable and easy access to quality social services, including health, education, and social protection, and to promote and maintain environmental integrity while supporting enhanced growth, productivity, social equity, resilience, and adaptive capacity. So effectively, this is a regional development policy that can enhance the well-being of every citizen in the member states. Some brief background. The ODS originated as a 10-year strategy developed around 3 mutually reinforcing pillars: generating economic growth, promoting human and social well-being, and sustainable use of natural endowments. In 2021, the OECD undertook an evaluation of the ODS implementation progress and found that implementation had been slow. In 2021, the OECD found that only 5% of the policy interventions showed significant progress, while 12% had made limited progress, with 3% of them registering no progress at all. The OECD in 2021 also produced a scorecard with 40 indicators to monitor progress. This has been preliminarily whittled down to 27 indicators, following feedback from member states and considering data availability. Due to the feedback, the ODS action framework was created, which is what I'll be presenting today. Creating this action framework involved extensive member state consultations, incorporating feedback from the OECD, and aligning the ODS with national level development plans. This action framework streamlined the ODS from 37 specific objectives and 270 actions to 10 specific objectives and 68 actions. This action framework was adopted by the Economic Affairs Council in June 2024. There were some changes from the original ODS into the action framework. So the chapter on growth supporting sectors in the original framework has been transformed into the pillars water and energy and infrastructure and connectivity, based on feedback from member states who emphasize the importance of these sectors. The agriculture chapter has also been significantly revised to reflect the new regional agricultural policy, the food and agriculture systems transformation strategy systems. The importance of regional transportation was also stressed, owing to its importance in the principles of the economic union. The macroeconomy and financial services were merged into one pillar. The trade elements of the macroeconomy chapter and the priorities of the manufacturing chapter were combined into a new chapter called Private Sector Development and Trade, and all transport elements under the tourism and agriculture chapters were merged into a new chapter on infrastructure and connectivity. The timeline has been changed from 2018 to 2028 to 2024 to 2030 to align with the Sustainable Development Goals. On implementation, there is a non-hierarchical relationship between national development strategies and the ODS. The ODS outlines common actions that member states will jointly and/or individually take with the aim of achieving mutually desired outcomes. The OECS Commission and the ECCB will continue to engage member states to understand the record and record key activities relating to the achievement of strategic actions of the Joint Action Framework. Progress will be monitored at the higher outcome level based on the indicators in the ODS scorecard, which I referred to earlier. Member states are in the progress of agreeing targets for each of the indicators of the ODS scorecard to measure their progress. And just to mention on this, as Clarence said, we often work in silos, and this scorecard is cutting across all of the 3 chapters, so economic growth, health, environment, and we try to take as much as a holistic approach as possible when selecting indicators for this scorecard. But obviously, we have challenges in the region with data availability. So I just also wanted to speak about the beneficial reasons of pursuing a regional development policy. Obviously, all member states have got their own national development policies, but at the OECS Commission, we thought a regional development strategy would enable long-term multi-sectoral planning, again, trying to get out of the silos, and will allow policies to focus on issues that fall outside national level remits, for example, regional transportation. There will also be a focus on those areas where the region can benefit from economies of scale, where a regional lens will enable greater access to financing and efficiency. So these are the 10 pillars of the ODS action framework. We've got macroeconomy and finance, which is under the remit of ECCB, private sector development and trade, tourism, agriculture and fisheries, energy and water, infrastructure and connectivity, social protection, education, health and environment. I just wanted to briefly run you through what the action framework currently looks like. So each of this pillar has got an overarching goal. For the macroeconomy and finance, we're hoping to ensure stability to support economic growth, and then there are specific objectives underneath each pillar. So for macroeconomy and finance, we have ensuring debt sustainability, developing a macro and micro-prudential framework, digitizing and harmonizing the payments and financial infrastructure in the region, strengthening the single financial space, develop the financial sector to increase citizen access to credit and other financial services. As I mentioned before, this is really the remit of the ECCB, so we're working collaboratively with them on this project. Then in private sector development and trade, we're hoping we can reduce the current account deficit and increase the value of exports. And the six specific objectives are to address the ease of doing business constraints, engender competitive markets, increase the international competitiveness as MSMEs and entrepreneurs, support private sector investment, facilitate, promote trade, leverage trade agreements and arrangements. In terms of tourism, we're hoping to increase the sector's sustainability and economic impact. Obviously, tourism plays a key role in the majority of OECS states' economies. So we're hoping that while we appreciate how important this is, we can increase the sustainability, but also not to be so dependent on tourism, and look for those high-value tourism products that can be promoted. So yeah, we've got seven specific objectives. The first is to identify, launch and establish collaborative marketing initiatives for niche tourism. The second is to promote environmental and cultural sustainability. Third is to expand community participation. The fourth is to boost value through increased sourcing from the local economy. The fifth is to support diversification through innovative product development. The sixth is to ensure comprehensive evidence-based analysis and information underpins sectoral development. And the seventh is to provide hospitality and development skills training. I think particularly number 4 is quite important because as we've seen, a lot of these hotels and tourism providers will import, their materials and food and beverages rather than sourcing from the local economy. So if we could use these tourism products as anchor institutions to boost the local economy, that would obviously be incredibly beneficial. So trying to get the sectors to work with each other so that they know what's going on and that the products that are produced in the region are products that tourism sector can feel like they can use in their products would be very good. In terms of agriculture and fisheries, the overall goal is to achieve food and nutrition security. Joel mentioned the port strikes in Miami, and it's true that in the region, the OECS in particular is incredibly food insecure, and it's incredibly dependent on imported food, as most people know. So we have created a FAST strategy, the Food and Agricultural Systemation Transformation Strategy, to try and deal with this. And we also have these 7 objectives. As I'm sort of running out of time, I'll just skip through this briefly. But each of the pillars have got, these goals and an overarching goal. So I sort of wanted to emphasize how cross-cutting this strategy is and how it covers every section of the economy. And just in terms of next steps, so we're working on regional policies for each of the pillars. We've got a sustainable tourism framework that's just being produced right now for tourism. In terms of agriculture and fisheries, as I mentioned, we have the FAST strategy. And in terms of environment and energy, we're working on renewable energy strategies across the region. We have an OECS GeoBuild project that's currently in the working. We're also trying to develop new policies for example, in terms of regional transportation. We're working with the World Bank to try and to undertake a stock take now of the region transportation in the region, and to see if we can develop a policy to ensure connectivity between the islands, as this is obviously an issue. In terms of private sector development and trade and infrastructure and connectivity, we're looking to see if we can try to make internet prices in the region more competitive and reduce the cost of doing business and increase the competitiveness of goods on the international market via those means. So yeah, this is very much a cross-cutting piece of work across many sectors, and we're trying to get out of the silo mentality for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald, for your comprehensive presentation. on the OECS's regional development agenda. We saw that some of their goals are ensuring debt sustainability and strengthening the single financial space, achieving food, nutrition security, and also ensuring resilience in the infrastructure sector. So next up, we have Mr. Brian Vidal, who will be doing economic development, youth economy perspective. So let's welcome Mr. Vidal.
Thank you. Will I see my? I could say that. Okay. So good morning, everyone. It's indeed a pleasure to be here with you this morning. So I will be presenting on economic development, or youth economy perspective. So in terms of the outline of the presentation, I will briefly explain what is economic development, the role of youth in economic development, some of the challenges, not all because there are too many to address right now, and the key areas for youth contribution, and of course we will conclude. So some of the early presenters would have given definitions for economic development, but there is no one generally accepted definition of economic development. So for instance, one researcher would have indicated that economic development is more qualitative and has meant all things to all men and women. But there is one definition that I like in particular, and I'll explain why as we go along. Economic development can be defined as the development of capacities that expand economic actors' capabilities. These actors may be individuals, firms, or industries. And capacities in that case refers to conditions conducive to promoting an array of intermediate outcomes that set the stage for the realization of potential. Now, what is interesting in that definition is that you find that the more active you have, the more participants you have in the system, the better. Now, any definition of economic development must also take into account sustainability, which is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. And I think Dr. Henry would have alluded to that earlier. And key to that is that in terms of building resilience, you find that when you have a workforce or you have a population that is trained, you know, they are better, they have more resilience in terms of dealing with unforeseen events. Now, what is the role of the youth in economic development? Now, I chose this picture specifically. You know, there is an old saying that says the elders are fast. The elders know the way, but the youth are fast. So in this picture, you will see that you have very experienced statement. You have the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, the Honorable Philip J. Pierre. At the time, he was also the chairperson of the CDB. And you also have President Leo at the time. And in the forefront, you have two young persons who are the representatives for the NYC, National Youth Council of St. Lucia at the time. And in the picture, you could see that they're in the forefront, and then the more experienced leaders are actually supporting their hands. So this just goes to show that anytime you're talking about development, there is the need to ensure that the youth are active participants in development. So this picture speaks volume. Now, according to the United Nations Development Program, in a world that is consistently evolving, the role of youth in shaping the future of their communities is more crucial than ever. From advocating for social cohesion and peace to leading initiatives for gender equality, young people are taking charge and making significant impact. So I want to make it abundantly clear right now that despite all of the challenges that we are seeing and we're hearing about, I believe right now is the ideal time for you to be a young person because there are several opportunities. The youth are very important because the youth are seen as the innovators and the agents of change. For instance, CDB would have indicated that they possess unmatched levels of innovation, creativity, and technological aptitude. Also, for the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals, it is not possible without the intervention of the young person. So again, this just goes to show that young persons are key when it comes to economic development. Now, why young persons? Number one, you find that in a developing country like St. Lucia, you find that we have a very large youthful population. For instance, the Caribbean Family Youth Resilience 2018 survey of St. Lucia would have indicated that 56.7%, or roughly 57% of our population, is under 40 years old. Similarly, the Central Statistics Office indicated that the age range of 15 to 29-year-olds account for 30,420 persons, and this accounts for 16% of the population. So why is this important? This segment was also identified as having the highest rates of unemployment and poverty. Now, when you talk about unemployment and poverty, they have consequences for the society, and we will see this as we go along. We also note that in St. Lucia, although the unemployment rate is going down, but it is still high when compared to the national average. So in 2023, we had unemployment rate of 25%, that's amongst the youth, compared to the national average of 14%. So the CDP would have indicated that based on our situation in St. Lucia, you have high rates of youth unemployment, and you also have a growing youthful population. So intentional strategies are needed to address this. One such strategy is the Youth Economy Agency, and I will explain as we go along. Now, when you have unemployed resources in your economy or in your country, it leads to a deadweight loss to society which cannot be regained. Now, this is critical. Remember, I would have indicated earlier that the more persons you are participating in your economy, the better it is for you. And again, because the youth are the agents of change and they are very innovative. Research also indicates that there is a positive correlation between unemployment, poverty, and crime and other social ills. Now, I was trying to look for statistics as it relates to the St. Lucian context, but I was unable to obtain it, so I had to use statistics from the US. So according to the National Institute of Health 2023, the annual economic burden of US youth violence was estimated at $120 billion in medical spending, lost productivity, reduced quality of life, and avoidable mortality. So that just goes to show that there is a cost to crime and delinquency. And if you watch the news or the media, you realize that a lot of the violent crimes, it impacts our youthful population. So this is of great concern to us. Now, what are some of the key areas that youth can contribute? Of course, at the youth economy, we focus on giving access to our youth. When I say youth, I'm referring to persons between the ages of 15 to 45, to give them increased access to finance. And it's not just only about giving access to finance in the forms of loans and grants, but also giving you the technical know-how to differentiate, what is revenue from profit and how to basically manage your business. Now, from an MSME perspective, this is critical because the MSME is considered to be like the lifeblood of an economy because government cannot employ all young persons. And one of the ways to address the unemployment situation in St. Lucia is by the development of programs that strengthen the MSME sector. Now, we are not saying that all young persons who receive support from the youth economy will have successful businesses, but the argument is that if you could get one founder of Amazon from the youth economy activities, then we'll be happy. There'll be a multiplier effect. Now, within the MSME sector, you also have different challenges. So, for instance, women entrepreneurs are considered to be more vulnerable than male entrepreneurs. Now, again, based on experience, I would say that is debatable because normally when you go to, one of the things I do is that when I go to any presentation that involves development, I look around. So, for instance, if I were to look around right now, I would say majority women. I think my time is up. So that's the trend you see. You go to a university class, you see majority women. When we have seminars and training, you see majority women. So what are some of the ways that the youth can contribute? Of course, workforce development, again, civic engagement. Again, youth must be involved in the process because it impacts them. And sustainable practices, we see a lot of entrepreneurs in that field, trying to engage in sustainable development practices, taking advantage of our very hot sun in St. Lucia. So this is absolutely critical. Now, in conclusion, one of the key takeaways is that youth are crucial for economic development, and they must be active participants in the development of our country. As a call to action, we need to encourage young people to become active agents in economic development initiatives. And looking ahead, the future of economic development is shaped by the actions of today's youth. And as Dr. Henry have indicated earlier about the Sustainable Development Goals, the attainment of these goals, it's impossible without the intervention of our young people. So again, our youth are critical to the success of our economy, and not just our economy, but for the wider OECS region. Okay, with that, I say thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vidal, for your presentation. We see that you highlighted the need for the representation of youth in economic development, and there needs to be intentional strategies to lessen youth unemployment. And this can be done through workforce development, entrepreneurship training, and support and sustainable practices. This currently brings us to the end of our session. I would like to say thank you to all our presenters. I would also like to acknowledge our online listeners. And I know it's a bit hot in here, but we're working to fix the issue. So with that being said, I'll open the floor to any questions or anybody who wants to make a contribution. So if you would like to do so, just raise your hand, or you could come up to the mic on the side. You'd like to give a contribution?
On it.
I would like to ask you a few questions.
Sure. You want to come up here? That's fine. Can I ask? Oh, okay. After Mr. Henry, Mr. Leros will give a contribution.
Yeah. But really, oh Lord of mercy, man. Nothing. But really, it's provocative question. I mean, I suppose I wouldn't ask question to the panelists since I was on the panel. But I think part of the issue that we face in the Caribbean, the OECS included, is the question of what do we see as development. So there's all what we've said, that there's the theoretical perspective, the World Bank's giving their views, other international organizations giving their views, but individually, what is development? So it would be nice if those of us who are here can perhaps speak to that somewhat, maybe ask a question relevant to this, so that at least we can zero in on the whole question of what is development for us.
I mean, was on the spot? But that's an interesting question. In 2024, we're still saying what is development. Clearly there's a sense that maybe there are different ideas, and we have not coalesced around something that we could all work towards. And I think maybe we should start from the top. And when I say from the top, I'm saying, how does government perceive development? And how has it organized itself to influence, catalyze, or cause development to take place. And maybe from there, we could say, hey, this is the vision, this is the idea, this is what we are working towards. Because if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. And I know that development planning is no longer in vogue, and I'm from the old school, believes in development planning, believes that, you know, we have scarce resources, so the way we use them is extremely important, where we get the best bang for our buck, and we do this for the people. And when we say the people, we're talking about those at the lower end to bring them up. And so do our policies, our strategies, tackle these. These are the things that are center of our mind when we start to design programs and how we measure how far we've come. But I think it's interesting that that question is asked as I walk into the room, and I suggest maybe we need to find a way to get a meeting of the minds and maybe the souls around that thing that we aspire to, development. Thank you.
Okay, I think Mr. Elios, you had a contribution to make.
Sure, and thanks to the presenters as well. I think it was an excellent session. But what I wanted to ask the presenters and why I think you are not seeing that connection in terms of shifting the needle development-wise, I would love to hear their views on what is the architecture we need to actually get that momentum. We spoke, for example, in terms of niche and community-based tourism as a way to sort of diversify the tourism industry away from just inclusives and whatnot. What architecture exists to connect persons who are interested in community tourism out in the tri-state area or whatnot to local communities? If you don't have an interface, and an interface that we have some stake in, is going to be very difficult to sort of execute that change. We also spoke, one of the presenters spoke to the social aspect of economic development. But if you look at our existing social architecture in terms of getting those persons who are in need of government assistance and what have you, funding, it's still a very analog, you must come in person, you must sign here on this book type of architecture. How do we now change that for a 2024-2025 period? So I would love to hear from the speakers their views on what are some of the building blocks we need to take these things from concept to actuality. Thank you.
Okay, do any of our speakers want to answer that? Dr. Henry?
Yeah, no, I think this is a very important question, actually. You know, the culture of economic planning is one that I think we would need to continue to build across the OECS and across CARICOM. And certainly within the context of the OECS development strategy, that is what we're trying to do at the OECS Commission. Arthur Lewis would have, and persons may not appreciate that actually. So I make reference to Arthur Lewis's initial effort at the industrialization of the British West Indies. That was in 1950. That's 74 years ago. And then in the context of even broader discussion on regional integration and strengthening intra-regional economic initiatives, trade, and so forth, Havelock Brewster, for instance, would have contributed to a piece in the early 1960s, looking at this aspect. Many countries like Jamaica would have had its 2030 vision plan, and Trinidad its 2020 vision plan, although it would be useful to look at where this landed for Trinidad, since we've 4 years post that plan. So there needs to be economic planning with a focus on putting into play. I think in my presentation I made reference to the silos and the issue that Persons are doing the different things, as it were. And while we're working towards a square, by the time you check, we have a rectangle because we've really focused and placed this together. I think that is the issue we would need to do across the OECS and CARICOM. But just to close on my point here, I think we would need to appreciate what could be considered issues around development that nationally and regionally we can coalesce around, such as what defines good health care, what defines a good education system, what defines the sort of infrastructure that is required for development, what sort of income levels are adequate, what's the, listening to Mr. Luisi, what's the right role of the private sector, in development? And putting all of these pieces together, I'm sure I missed several, perhaps would be part of what that plan should include. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that, Dr. Henry. Any other questions or contributions? I don't think we have any online. Okay, so with that, we'll bring this session to a close. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in for this first session of the Research Symposium. Thank you so much.
Thanks to our chairperson, Ms. Yasmin Alfred, and thanks to our presenters. Thanks for the contributions as well. It was definitely an interesting session. The question still remains, but as we go along, I think about it, as we engage in all the discussions, what's development? Is it growth in GDP? Is it personally you've improved? What is it? Is it national index? Is it improvement in healthcare in the country? There can be different views as to what development really is. So something to keep in mind, and as we go along, as we discuss, what really is it? So thanks to everyone for the first session, and now we will have a break, and we'll be back here at 11:30. So the break should be on my, just checking the entire break is there, just in case. Is it there? It's there. Oh, awesome, amazing. So the break should be on my right, should be your left. Yes. So we'll be back at 11:30. Enjoy. Thank you.